The little girl's hand was shaking when she grabbed the single dad's sleeve in the hospital hallway and whispered words he never expected to hear from a stranger's daughter. "Please, can you pretend to be my husband? Just for 5 minutes. My mom is scared and she doesn't want to face the doctor alone." He looked down at her, confused, his own daughter clutching his other hand. And in that moment he had no idea this simple request would change 3 lives forever. The single dad had been raising his 6-year-old daughter, Lily, alone for 2 years, ever since his wife passed away from a sudden illness that no one saw coming. Every night he tucked Lily into bed and every morning he made her breakfast before rushing to his job at the hardware store, trying his best to be both a mother and a father, even though some nights he cried quietly in the shower so she wouldn't hear him. That day, they were at the hospital because Lily needed a routine checkup. Nothing serious, just a scraped knee that wouldn't stop bleeding from a fall at the playground. While waiting in the hallway, a young girl about 8 years old, with messy braids and tear-filled eyes, approached them nervously. Her name was Emma. Emma explained in broken sentences that her mother, a woman named Claire, was inside getting terrible news about her health, and the hospital only allowed 1 visitor per room unless it was immediate family. Claire had no husband, no family nearby, and she was terrified of hearing the diagnosis alone. Emma had heard the nurses say only a spouse could come in for emotional support during this particular consultation. So in her innocent desperation, she asked the first kind-looking man she saw to pretend, just pretend, to be her mother's husband so her mom wouldn't have to face this moment by herself. The single dad felt his heart tighten. He had lost his own wife. He knew exactly what it felt like to receive terrifying news in a cold hospital room, alone, with no one to hold his hand. He looked at Emma's small trembling face and thought about how his own daughter would feel if she were in this position, begging a stranger for comfort. He knelt down to Emma's level and said gently, "Why pretend, sweetheart? I'll go in as your mother's friend. That's not a lie, and I'll stay right beside her. Is that okay?" Emma's eyes lit up with relief and she nodded so fast her braids bounced. He asked a nurse passing by if a friend could accompany a patient during difficult news, and thankfully, the nurse said yes, family or a support person was allowed. The single dad asked his own mother, who happened to be visiting from out of town and was in the waiting room, to watch both girls for a few minutes while he walked into that room with a woman he had never met. When he entered, Claire was sitting on the exam table wearing a hospital gown, her face pale, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. She looked up in confusion when she saw a stranger walk in beside the doctor. "I'm sorry, who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. He explained quickly, softly, "Your daughter Emma asked me to come sit with you. She didn't want you to be alone. I know this is strange, but I promise I'm just here to support you, nothing more." Claire's eyes filled with tears instantly, not because a stranger was in the room, but because her little girl, only 8 years old, had thought of her, had tried to protect her from loneliness even in a moment of fear. The doctor delivered the news. Claire had a serious but treatable form of anemia that had been causing her constant exhaustion and dizziness. It wasn't cancer. It wasn't fatal, but it required immediate treatment and monitoring. Claire broke down crying, this time from relief, and without thinking, she reached for the single dad's hand, and he let her hold it, because sometimes people don't need explanations, they just need someone present. After the appointment, Claire thanked him repeatedly, embarrassed and grateful at the same time, explaining that she had been a single mother for 3 years after her husband left them for another woman, and she had learned to handle everything alone. Doctor visits, bills, school events, everything, but today her body and her courage had simply run out. The single dad told her honestly, "I understand more than you know. My wife passed away 2 years ago, and I know what it feels like to sit in these chairs wondering how you're supposed to survive whatever comes next, completely alone." Something passed between them in that moment, not romance, not yet, just recognition, the quiet understanding between 2 people who had both been broken by life and were somehow still standing. Emma and Lily became fast friends almost instantly, sitting together in the waiting room coloring pictures while the adults talked, and by the time they left the hospital that day, Phone numbers had been exchanged, not out of attraction, but out of a mutual need for support from someone who actually understood the exhaustion of solo parenting. Over the following weeks, the single dad checked in on Claire regularly, sometimes just a text asking how her treatment was going, sometimes dropping off dinner when Claire was too tired to cook for Emma. Claire, in turn, started picking up Lily from school on days when the single dad had to work late shifts, refusing to accept any payment, saying simply, "This is what people do for each other, we're not so different, you and me." Slowly, without either of them planning it, their families started blending together, dinners on Fridays, park visits on Saturdays, the girls sleeping over at each other's houses, laughing until midnight while the adults sat on the porch talking about grief, healing, and the terrifying responsibility of raising children without a partner. But just when things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected obstacle arrived. Claire's ex-husband suddenly reappeared, claiming he had changed, begging for a second chance, wanting to be part of Emma's life again after 3 years of complete silence. Claire was torn, angry at his absence yet hopeful for Emma's sake, because every child deserves a father, and she agonized over whether letting him back in was forgiveness or foolishness. The single dad, despite his own growing feelings for Claire, told her something that surprised her deeply. "Don't make this decision based on me or on anger. Make it based on what's right for Emma. And whatever you decide, I'll still be here for both of you." His selflessness, his refusal to manipulate her pain for his own benefit, was the moment Claire realized this man was fundamentally different from anyone she had ever known. Claire agreed to let her ex-husband see Emma under supervised conditions, but within 2 months, he vanished again, missing visits, making excuses, ultimately proving that people don't always change, no matter how badly we want them to. Emma was heartbroken, but the single dad was there, taking her and Lily to the park, telling her gently, "Some people leave because they're not ready to be the parent you need, but that doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. You have so many people around you who love you completely." Claire watched from a distance as this man, who wasn't obligated to her daughter in any way, comforted her with more patience and warmth than her own father ever had. And something inside Claire's heart shifted permanently that day. 6 months after that first hospital encounter, on a quiet evening while the girls were building a blanket fort in the living room, Claire finally asked the single dad the question that had been building inside her for weeks. "Why did you help us that day? A random stranger's daughter asks you to pretend to be someone you're not, and you just said yes?" He thought for a moment before answering honestly. "Because I know what it's like to need someone and have no one, and I promised myself after losing my wife that if I ever had the chance to be that someone for another person, I would take it, no hesitation." Claire's eyes welled up again, but this time she reached for his hand not out of fear or gratitude, but out of something deeper, something that had been quietly growing between two wounded hearts that had learned to trust again through small acts of consistent kindness. A year later, in a small backyard wedding surrounded by folding chairs and string lights, the single dad and Claire stood together as husband and wife, with Emma and Lily standing beside them as flower girls, both sisters now in every way that mattered. During the reception, Emma stood up with a small piece of paper in her shaking hands and told the guests the story of how her mom met her new dad, ending her speech with the words, "I asked a stranger to pretend to be my mom's husband for 5 minutes, and instead, he decided to become her husband forever. That's how I know real love isn't something you plan. It's something you choose every single day." There wasn't a dry eye in that backyard, because everyone understood they had just witnessed something rare. Proof that kindness offered without expectation of anything in return has the power to rebuild entire families from nothing but broken pieces and quiet courage. The single dad often says now that the greatest lesson life taught him wasn't found in his darkest moment of losing his wife, but in the moment he chose to show up for 2 strangers who needed him, because sometimes the family we're meant to have isn't the one we lose, but the one we're brave enough to build. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Wings of Kindness for more inspiring stories. Remember, even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life.